Martin's Mice by Dick King-Smith. "Mercy! Mercy!" cried the mouse. It felt rather a fat mouse, and when Martin removed his paw, he could see that indeed it was. "Oh, dear," he said, "I'm most awfully sorry." Even when the farm kittens were very young, the mother cat, whose name was Dulcie Maud, had known that Martin was different from his brother Robin and his sister Lark. Dulcie Maud, as you can see from her choice of names, was fond of small birds. When Dulcie Maud first brought home a very small mouse, Martin wouldn't touch it. "Don't be such a wimp," said Robin with his mouth full. "You're just a Wally," said Lark. "I quite agree," said Dulcie Maud sharply. "Who ever heard of a cat that didn't like mice?" And she gave Martin a cuff. "Now start eating and stop being so wet." Somehow Martin managed a mouthful of mouse. Then he went into a corner and was sick. Dulcie Maud brought home more and bigger mice, and insisted that Martin always ate a bit of mouse before he was allowed any of the kinds of tinned meat that the farmer's wife put out for the cats. At last the day dawned when Dulcie Maud dumped a final mouse in front of the kittens and said in her brisk way, "Now then, I've worn my claws to the bone catching mice for you all. You're on your own. See you round." Humans, Martin was glad to find, didn't chase cats. The farmer paid little attention to him, but the farmer's wife made sure he had enough to eat, and the farmer's daughter actually made quite a fuss of him. One day she took Martin to see her rabbits, 3 white rabbits with pink eyes, that she kept in 3 large hutches at the bottom of the garden. Why did she keep them, he wondered. The next time that Martin met his mother on his journeys, he asked her about this. "Mother," he said, "why does that girl keep those rabbits?" "As pets," Dulcie Maud said. "What's a pet?" "A pet is an animal that humans keep because they like it. They like looking after it, making a fuss of it." "So we're pets, are we?" "Strictly speaking, I suppose. Dogs certainly are always fussing around humans, sucking up to them." "What about cows and pigs and sheep?" No, they're not pets," said Dulcie Maud. "Humans eat them, you see." "But they don't eat cats and dogs?" "Of course not." "And they don't eat rabbits?" "Oh, yes, they eat rabbits, but not pet rabbits." "Why not?" "Oh, stop your endless questions, Martin, do. Curiosity, in case you don't know, killed the cat." And she stalked off, swishing her tail. It was curiosity, nevertheless, that led Martin to climb up the steep steps into the cart-shed loft to see what was in it. What was in it, in fact, was a load of junk. Against one wall stood an old white-enamelled bath, and it was while Martin was exploring beneath it that something suddenly shot out. Automatically he put his paw on it. "I'm most awfully sorry," he said again, but the fat mouse only continued to say, "Mercy, mercy," in a quavery voice. "Don't be frightened," he said. "It's not for myself alone that I beg you to spare me. You see, I am pregnant." What a strange name, thought Martin. "Oh, how do you do?" he said. "I am Martin." What a dear little thing, he thought. "Shall I tell you what I'm going to do with you?" he said. "Ah, I know what you're going to do," said the mouse wearily. "After you've finished tormenting me, you're going to eat me." "Oh, you're wrong," said Martin. He bent his head and gently picked up the mouse in his mouth. He climbed onto an old wooden chest that stood handily beside the bath and looked down into its depths. A perfect place, he thought excitedly. He jumped in and laid his burden carefully down. "Kill me," said the mouse feebly. "Kill me and have done." "Not on your life," said Martin. "I'm going to keep you for a pet." The mouse didn't reply. It lay on the rust-stained bottom of the bath, shivering. "Oh, dear, you're cold," said Martin. He began to collect mouthfuls of straw from the stuffing of an old horse collar, packing it round the fat mouse to make a nest. Now, he thought, I'd better get it some food. Martin was halfway across the farmyard when it occurred to him that he didn't know what mice liked to eat. He looked around and saw a sheep peering through the bars of a yard gate from the field beyond. "Can you help me?" "You?" said the sheep. "Yes." "Can I help you?" "Yes." "No," said the sheep. "But "You don't know what I was going to say next," said Martin. The sheep appeared to be considering this. "How can I know what you're going to say next?" it said at last. "What you think I am, mind reader?" "No," said Martin. "No, I certainly don't." The sheep, which had a long, sad face, looked disappointed at this. "But I'm sure that you know all about mice and what they like to eat." "Mice?" said the sheep. "Yes." "Field mice?" "No, house mice." "I don't know anything about house mice," said the sheep. "How could I? I don't live in a house. I live in a field." "Ah, so you know about field mice?" "No," said the sheep. "Do you?" "No," said Martin. "Then you're stupid," said the sheep, and walked away. Martin sighed. "I'll ask a pig," he thought. He jumped up onto the wall of the first sty and looked down. Beneath him lay a large boar. He was fast asleep and snoring, his mouth partly open. Martin noted the size of his tusks. Flattery would do no harm, he thought, so he gave a little cough, and when the boar opened an eye, he said in a buttery voice, "My mother tells me that of all the farmyard animals, the pig is by far the cleverest." The boar levered himself to his feet. "Indubitably," he said. Martin didn't know the meaning of this long word, but it seemed that the pig was not displeased, so he pressed on. "So I'm sure you will be able to tell me," he said, "what mice eat. I asked a sheep, but it didn't know."
"Predictably," said the boar, "the intelligence quotient of the average herbivore is abysmal. Carnivores such as yourself are a little better endowed, but in general it's the omnivores whose intellectual abilities are preeminent. Amongst the omnivorous creatures we find the humble mouse, possibly the exception that proves the rule, but far superior to all the others are the pig and man. In that order."
The boar paused for breath. Martin, half drowned in the sea of words, sat silent and bemused for a moment. Then he said, "But I still don't see what mice eat."
"To say that you're stupid," he said, "would be the understatement of all time."
And he lay down again and shut his eyes. Martin jumped over the garden wall and ran down to the rabbit hutches. 3 pairs of pink eyes stared blankly out at him. "They don't look terribly clever," Martin thought. "I shall speak clearly and slowly to them. What do mice eat?" he said.
"Stick around," said one of the rabbits sourly, "and you'll soon see."
Martin stuck around, and before long a mouse appeared from nowhere, climbed the leg of the wooden trestle on which the hutches stood, popped in through the wire front of one of them, shoved its nose into the feeding bowl, and proceeded to gobble away with gusto. "Oh, great!" cried Martin. "Mice eat rabbit food."
"If you think that's great," said the rabbits, "you must be stupid."
Martin had discovered what mice ate, but how could he get hold of some of the stuff? At that very moment he heard footsteps coming down the garden path. Martin went to meet the farmer's daughter and rubbed himself against her legs. The girl bent down and pulled out a large biscuit tin from beneath the trestle and removed the lid. She opened one of the hutch doors and reached in to take out a feeding bowl. While her back was turned, Martin acted. Quick as a flash, he shoved his face into the tin and took the biggest mouthful he could manage of the little brown rod-shaped rabbit pellets. He hurried to the cart shed and climbed the flight of steps that led to the loft above. "Look what I've brought you!" he cried with pride. But there was no reply. For a nasty moment Martin thought that his pet mouse had somehow escaped, but then he saw movement in the straw, which had now been neatly woven into a round ball. A mouse appeared and began to feed hungrily upon the rabbit food. But this was surely not his mouse. This was not the fat mouse with the strange name. "I am pregnant," it had said. But this was a thin mouse. "Why," cried Martin in amazement, "you are not pregnant." "Too true," said the mouse, stuffing another rabbit pellet into its mouth and chewing busily. I don't understand you," said Martin. The mouse regarded him beadily.
I don't understand you, but thanks awfully for the grub, and you can have a peep if you like.
A peep?
In the nest, gently mind.
Carefully Martin jumped into the bath and scraped away a little of the straw on top of the nest ball. Inside it were 8 blind, pink, hairless baby mice. "Oh," gasped Martin. "Oh, I say, aren't they lovely?"
"All thanks to you, Martin," said the mouse. "I'm truly grateful."
"Oh, don't mention it," said Martin in a fluster. "Don't mention it."
"I'm afraid I confused you with regard to my name," said the mouse. "Actually, it's Drusilla."
"I say, what a jolly name," said Martin. Now, as the weeks passed, and the mouse cubs grew larger every day, it seemed everything in the bath was lovely. But even as he gazed fondly down at them all, Martin was dogged by a secret fear. Suppose one of the other cats should ever come up into the loft of the cart shed. At that very moment he heard the scratch of claws on the flight of steps. "Robin," thought Martin, "or Lark, or both. Oh, it's all up with my mice once they find them." He jumped off the wooden chest and dashed to the hole in the loft floor where the steps emerged. Climbing them, dimly seen in the gloom, was an indistinct cat shape, and with a wild cry of "We'll see who's a wimp and a wally," Martin launched himself at it. Together they tumbled to the floor. The next thing Martin felt was a terrific thump on one ear.
"You stupid boy,"
hissed Dulcie Maud, thumping him on the other one.
"Whatever do you think you're doing?"
Oh, so sorry, Mother," gasped Martin. "I didn't know it was you."
"Oh, I saw you going into the cart shed," said Dulcie Maud, "so I followed you to see what you were up to. You should know by now that mice only live where there's food for them. You won't find any mice in here."
"No, Mother," said Martin. "Don't you like your children?" asked Martin. "I think they're lovely."
"Of course I like them," said Drusilla angrily. "It's just that I'm fed up to the back teeth with a lot of them. If I were living a normal life, instead of being cooped up in this lousy bath, I'd have kicked them out by now. 'You're on your own,' I'd have said to them. 'See you around.' As it is, they're driving me bananas."
"Oh," said Martin. "What do you want me to do?"
"Let them go."
"Let them go? But then I'd only have 1 pet mouse instead of 9.
"You'd have 1 reasonably happy pet," said Drusilla, "instead of 9 miserable ones."
So that night Martin let them go. 8 times he jumped into the bath, gently picked up one of Drusilla's children in his mouth, jumped out again, crept down the steps, and deposited the mouse cub on the floor of the cart shed. "How I shall miss them," he thought, as he climbed back up the steps into the loft. "And how much more will Drusilla?" "All gone," he said to her sadly. "Try not to worry."
"Worry?"
said Drusilla.
"Oh, you must be joking. It's lovely to have the place to myself and the chance to tidy up a bit. So don't just sit there, Martin. You can lend a paw. Stir your stumps."
Yes, Drusilla," said Martin. The days that followed were relaxing ones for the kitten. It was nice to have Drusilla to himself, without constant interruptions from the cubs, forever demanding attention. "I can see now," he said, "why you were glad to see the back of them."
"I don't know what you mean,"
said Drusilla shortly. "Well, you said they were driving you bananas. Don't you remember?" Drusilla didn't answer. "I can understand that now," said Martin. "It must be terribly tiring being a mother."
"I trust I've always done my duty,"
said Drusilla in a huffy voice.
"Oh, yes. Oh, you have. Of course you have," said Martin. "I just meant that children can be a bit of a nuisance. When they're bigger, I mean. Of course, it's different when they're tiny babies, all pink and fat and blind and naked. They're really rather adorable then, don't you think?"
He noticed a dreamy look come over the face of his pet.
"Yes,"
murmured Drusilla.
"Yes, they are."
"But you can always have some more," said Martin. The dreamy look promptly disappeared.
"Exactly how," said Drusilla acidly, "am I supposed to manage that on my own?"
Martin looked puzzled. How her moods do change, he thought. "Well, you managed it before," he said.
"Martin," said Drusilla, "did your mother never teach you the facts of life?"
"I don't know what you mean," said Martin.
"Oh, it's high time you did," said Drusilla. "Listen to me."
Thus it came about that the very next morning Martin lay in ambush in the chicken house.
"Just get it firmly into your head," Drusilla had said, "that for reasons I explained to you, it's got to be a buck, a male mouse. I shall be furious if you turn up with a doe like me."
"But when I catch a mouse, Drusilla," said Martin, "how shall I know which it is?"
"Oh, I can't be bothered to go into all that now. Just ask it."
Hearing a scurrying sound overhead, Martin looked up to see a mouse running along one of the perches just above him. With one paw he cuffed it off the perch, and with the other he pinned it down. He spoke softly into its ear. "Are you a buck?" he said.
"No,"
gasped the quivering mouse.
"I'm a doe."
"Oh, you're no good to me," said Martin. "I need a buck." Martin hunted all day, but strangely there seemed to be a great shortage of bucks. Little did he know that once she had recovered, his first victim had been quick to spread the word.
"Pass it along," she'd said. "If that crazy kitten catches you, just say you're a doe, and he'll let you go."
"Sorry," said Martin to Drusilla that evening. "I caught 6 altogether, but would you believe it, there wasn't a buck amongst them."
"Strange," she said.
"Yes," said Martin. "Each one said, 'I'm a doe.'"
You didn't let on that you were only after a buck, did you?"
"Well, yes. I did say that to the first one I caught."
"Oh," said Drusilla. "Next mouse you catch, don't ask it anything. Simply bring it back here."
And the following morning Martin did. He caught a mouse, a big, sleek, dark one it was, under the rabbit hutches, and carried it back to the cart shed. "Here you are, Drusilla," cried Martin. "Is it a buck or a doe?" But there was no answer. Dropping into the bath, and dropping his new capture in it too, Martin cautiously pulled apart the nest ball. There was nothing in it. He called Drusilla's name. From a far corner of the loft came 2 answers. One was the voice of his pet.
"Here, Martin, I'm here!"
cried Drusilla faintly.
"Oh, save me, save me!"
The other voice said no word. What Martin saw filled him with horror. A few yards away, crouching between the legs of an old broken kitchen chair, was a very large cat. Held beneath one of its forepaws was his pet. For a moment he hesitated, fearing to tackle such an opponent, but then Drusilla cried once more, "Save me!" and he threw caution to the winds. With a cry of, "Leave my mouse alone!" Martin ran forward, only to receive a blow across the head that knocked him flying.
"Your mouse?"
rumbled the big tomcat.
You've got a cheek. This mouse is mine, so clear out and let me eat in peace."
"I'll tell my mother of you," screamed Martin. "She'll sort you out, you big ugly bully."
"You watch your tongue," said the Tom, "or it's you that'll get sorted out." "Tell your mother, indeed. Who's she, anyway?"
"Her name's Dulcie Maud," yelled Martin, "and she could beat you with one paw tied behind her back."
The look on the Tom's face changed suddenly.
"Well, well, well," he said. "So you're Dulcie Maud's boy. Ah. In that case, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll split the mouse half each."
And he bent his head towards Drusilla, ready to bite off hers.
"Wait!" Martin screeched. "Don't eat that one. I've got another one, a bigger one. Have that instead."
The Tom raised his head.
"Where is it, then?" he said. "I don't see it."
"It's in the bath," Martin said. "That's where I keep my mice."
"Keep 'em?"
"I keep them as pets. I don't eat mice."
The tomcat was so astonished at this that he released his hold on Drusilla, who crawled dazedly to Martin and crept behind him for protection.
"This is my special pet, you see," said Martin, "and I've only just caught the one that's in the bath now, and he was going to be a husband for Drusilla if he's he, which I don't know yet because Drusilla hasn't met him, and now she never will if you eat him, which I wish you wouldn't, but I can't stop you, but if you try to get Drusilla back, I'll fight you until there isn't a breath left in my body."
"I'm surprised there's one left now," said the Tom, "after a speech like that."
He came to sit beside Martin.
"You're a funny lad," he said. "What's your name?"
"Martin."
"Ah, I'm Pug. I expect that means something to you."
"No," said Martin.
"Dulcie Maud's never mentioned me?"
"No."
"Typical,"
said Pug. He stretched and yawned, and Drusilla, peeping round, shuddered at the sight of those claws and teeth.
Go on, then, said Pug. Stick her back in with the other one. There are plenty of other good mice on the farm.
Do you mean you're not going to kill either of them? Said Martin.
No, said Pug. You can keep your precious pets.
I don't understand, said Martin, when he had carefully put Drusilla back in the bath. Why have you spared their lives?
Because I like the look of you, young Martin. Yeah, you got spirit. You got plenty of courage. If you fancy keeping pet mice, then you shall, and woe betide the cat that tries to stop you. I'm proud of you, my boy.
I don't understand, said Martin again. Why should you be?
Can't a father be proud of his son?
Said Pug. You're my dad? Cried Martin.
I'm your dad, said Pug. By the way, how many brothers and sisters have you?
One of each.
And do they keep pet mice too? Said Pug.
Oh, no, said Martin. They're great mousers, like Mother, and like you, I expect.
Yeah, you expect right, my son, said Pug. Though actually I prefer rat-catching myself. More meat on him, you know. Ever thought of keeping a pet rat? I could soon pick one up for you.
No, thanks, Dad, said Martin. I don't fancy them. It's mice I like. They're so little and pretty, especially Drusilla. And you should have seen her babies.
Pug licked his lips. What became of them? He said.
I let them go, said Martin, when they were big enough. Drusilla asked me to.
And now she's asked you to find her a husband?
Yes.
Oh, typical, said Pug. Well, now, we better go and see if you've picked the right kind for her.
Oh, wait a minute, Dad, said Martin hastily. Let me explain things to them first. Martin jumped up onto the chest. Already the nest ball had been cobbled together again, and when he called her name, Drusilla came cautiously out of it. "Has he gone?" she said. "No," said Martin, "but it's all right, Drusilla. He won't hurt you." "Won't hurt me? He was within an ace of biting my head off." "Yes, but you'll be quite okay now. He's my father, you see, and he's agreed not to harm you. So, tell me, did I choose right? Is it a buck?" "Yes," said Drusilla. "Oh, goody. But you think you're going to like him?" "Oh, Martin, he's the handsomest buck I ever saw. In fact," she whispered dreamily, "it was love at first sight." "Oh, ask him to come out, won't you? And then I can show him to my father." And he called, "Dad!" It took a little time for the sleek, dark mouse to come out. "Hello, hello," said Martin to him in a jolly voice. "Nice to see you again. Allow me to introduce my father, Mr. Pug. Now then, Dad, this is Drusilla."
"Yeah, we've already met," said Pug gravely.
"And this is Cuthbert," said Drusilla. During the next couple of weeks, Drusilla grew noticeably fatter again. "You're putting on weight, Drusilla," Martin said. "Am I overfeeding you?" "Oh, for goodness sake, Martin," said Drusilla in her sharpest voice. "I thought I'd explained all that to you. Tell him, Cuthbert, do." A look of smug self-satisfaction passed over Cuthbert's dark and handsome features.
"Oh, we're having a family," he said.
"Of course," said Martin. "Oh, how stupid of me. Congratulations, Cuthbert. What fun. When?"
"Oh, quite soon," said Cuthbert. "In about another week, I think."
"Oh, good. Not long to wait," said Martin. "Not long to wait, did you say?" said Drusilla in an icy voice. "Well, I do hope that both of you can manage to be patient. It must be such a trying time for you, sitting about waiting, especially when I've got nothing at all to worry about, except giving birth to umpteen babies in a cold, hard prison from which there is no chance of escape. Oh, what a lucky mouse I am!"
"Typical," said Pug later, when Martin told him of Drusilla's outburst.
"She's going to have more babies," said Martin.
Said Pug. He licked his lips. "When?" he said.
"In about a week," said Martin. He looked narrowly at his father. "Dad," he said, "you wouldn't—"
No, Martin, lad," said Pug. "Of course not, seeing that they're your pets. But all the same, I think I'd better make myself scarce for a while. Out of temptation, you know. There's nothing quite as delicious as—"
"Stop!" cried Martin. "I can't bear to think of such a thing. So little, so defenceless.
So tender, said Pug. Just so. See you around, my boy. Hope everything goes smoothly.
But it didn't. The very next morning, not long after Martin had brought the mice a nice breakfast, a pig-nut for Cuthbert, and for Drusilla a ripe strawberry, they heard the sound of footsteps in the cart-shed below, and then the noise of barking, and then a human voice.
"What's all the fuss about, Bob?" said the farmer. "A cat up in the loft, is there?"
"There's a cat up in the loft," raged Bob, the collie dog. "If only I could get up these steps."
"Don't worry about the dog," whispered Martin up above. "He can't get up these steps." "But the human can," said Drusilla. "Hurry, Martin, you must get us out of this death trap." Just then they heard the stairs creak. Cuthbert's nerve broke. "Mayday, mayday!" he squeaked at the top of his voice.
"Listen to that!"
grumbled the farmer as he climbed.
"Bloomin' mice!"
Martin thought desperately. Quick as a flash he picked up Drusilla, and as gently as he could he dropped her in a far corner of the loft. He ran back for Cuthbert. When at last he jumped onto the wooden chest with Cuthbert in his mouth, the farmer was already in the loft.
"Ah, Bob was right," he said. "There was a cat up here, and a proper little mouser too. Good boy!"
He reached out to give the good boy a pat on the head. Martin, thinking he was trying to take Cuthbert, growled fiercely. Cuthbert, thinking the growl was directed at him, fainted clean away.
"That's one mouse less,"
said the farmer with satisfaction, as he saw the body go limp in the kitten's jaws.
"I'll leave you to eat it in peace."
And he turned and climbed back down the steps. Martin lay the unconscious Cuthbert down and began to revive him. At this moment Drusilla reappeared. From her hiding-place she had heard the kitten growling, and now she saw that he was, it seemed, nuzzling at the dead body of her mate. "Murderer!" she screamed. "You've made me a widow and orphaned my unborn children, you who pretended to be my friend!" And she turned and staggered blindly away. "Hang on, Drusilla!" cried Martin. "You've got it all wrong. Cuthbert's not dead. Are you, Cuthbert?" Or is he? Thought Martin. Could he have died of fright? "Speak to me, Cuthbert!" he cried. But there was no reply. "Oh, Drusilla!" he shouted. "Come back! Cuthbert may need mouse-to-mouse resuscitation. Come here quickly!" But there was no reply. Leaving Cuthbert, Martin began to look frantically for Drusilla, but he couldn't find her. At last he returned to see how Cuthbert was going on, but Cuthbert had gone.
"If you want to find a mouse, ask another mouse," said Pug. "Go and catch one and ask it, that's my advice. I'll lend a paw if you like. In fact, you'd better let me do the catching. It'll be quicker."
"But what if the mouse doesn't know where Drusilla is?"
"I'll eat it. Stay here, I shan't be long."
And sure enough, he was back in 10 minutes with a mouse.
"Here's a young un for starters," said Pug. "Ask it."
"Don't be frightened," Martin said in a kindly voice to the terrified mouse. "We only want to ask you a simple question. Do you know where Drusilla lives?"
"Yes."
"Where?"
"In the bath, in the loft over the cart shed."
"Wrong answer," said Pug. "You're out of date, and you're out of luck, too."
"Wait, Dad, wait!" cried Martin. And to the mouse he said, "Why, you must be one of Drusilla's cubs, one of the 8 that I released."
"I am, Uncle Martin, I am."
"I recognize you now. What are you called?" said Martin. "I forget."
8,
said the mouse.
Mother gave us all numbers, remember?
"Come in, number 8, said Pug. "Your time is up."
And he opened his mouth wide. "No, Dad, please. This is one of my mice. You mustn't eat her. She may be the very one to help me find her mother. You will, won't you, 8?
"Yes, Uncle Martin, oh yes,"
cried 8. "Promise?"
"Yes, yes, cross my heart."
"And hope to die," said Pug dryly, "if you break your word." "You're too soft, Martin, lad," he said, as they watched 8 skipping thankfully away. "We'll never see her again."
But he was wrong. That very evening Martin was sitting outside the back door of the farmhouse, tidying himself up after a meal of fish-flavoured happy-puss, when he heard a little voice say, "Psst!" He looked about him and saw 8 peeping round the edge of a dustbin. Martin had the sense to say nothing, for Dulcie Maud and Robin and Lark were all nearby. Instead he walked slowly away, hoping that 8 would follow. He made for the Dutch barn and lay down upon a straw bale and waited. Before long there was a rustling, and 8 appeared beside him.
"I found Mother, Uncle Martin," she said.
"Good kid," said Martin. "And the new babies? She had the babies all right?"
"Yes, 12. These are all called after the months of the year."
"How charming. I can't wait to see them."
"Well, that's just it, Uncle Martin,"
said 8 nervously.
"You can't."
"Oh, why not? You've only got to tell me where they are."
"I can't."
"Why not?"
"She made me swear not to tell you. She said you'd only put them all back in the bath. I know you'll be angry with me, Uncle Martin, but what am I to do?"
"Oh, I shan't be angry, 8. But I'll tell you who will be if he finds out."
"Your father?"
"Yes," said Martin. "He'll kill you for sure." At that moment they heard the smallest of sounds somewhat high above them. "Oh, probably a bird messing about," said Martin. "Now, listen, 8. Go back to Drusilla and tell her I won't put them all back in the bath. Say that I just want to see her again, and Cuthbert and the babies, and then come back and tell me what she says. Will you do that for me?"
"But you see where I'm going, Uncle Martin, and then you follow me."
"Look," said Martin, "I won't follow you. I'll go right down to the other end of the farmyard."
"Promise,"
said 8. "I promise," said Martin. "And you'll come back? Promise?"
"I promise."
So off went Martin in one direction, and after a while off went 8 in another. "Promises, promises," growled a deep voice from on top of a stack of bales, and off went Pug, after 8. All that night Martin wandered around the farmyard, calling every now and then in the hope that 8 would hear his voice and run to him with news. Instead, his mother came upon him.
"Oh, stop that caterwauling at once, Martin," she hissed. "You spoil the night's hunting for us, for me and Robin and Lark."
"And Dad?"
"Your father? When did you last see your father?"
"Yesterday. He's been away, on business."
"Ha!"
spat Dulcie Maud angrily, and she stalked off, lashing her tail.
"Typical,"
said a voice behind Martin. Martin looked round to see Pug with a small mouse in his mouth. It was 8. Pug put 8 carefully down on the ground. 8 squeaked,
"Mr. Pug was kindly giving me a lift."
"Heard you talking in the Dutch barn, you see," said Pug, "so I followed her, just in case she didn't come back."
"What did Drusilla say?" said Martin.
"Mother doesn't want to see you again, Uncle Martin. I feel bad about it, she said, because I owe my life to Martin, but I can't risk it. Maybe he wouldn't put us back in the bath, she said, but he might get some other crazy idea for keeping us, and I value my freedom too much."
8 paused for breath. "Oh," said Martin.
"I'm sorry, Uncle Martin."
"Didn't she even send a message?" asked Martin miserably.
"She sent her best regards."
"Oh, well, that's nice, I suppose."
"You cut along home now, young 8," said Pug, "and mind how you go."
"Yes, Mr. Pug, and thanks for the lift."
She scuttled away into the darkness. "But, Dad," said Martin, "you must know where Drusilla and her family are."
"I do, Martin, lad, but I'm not telling you. I think it's high time you forgot all about this silly business of keeping mice as pets. You heard what Drusilla said. It's her freedom she values. To keep a wild animal like a mouse shut up, it's wrong, you know. Just think how lucky you are, to be free to go where you like and do what you want."
"But I'm not wild, Dad."
"All cats are wild at heart, my son. Many are lucky, especially farm cats like us, but some town cats are nothing better than prisoners, kept indoors all the time. What if some humans come out here from the town one day to buy some free-range eggs?
Well,
what if they bought a free-range tabby kitten as well, and took it away with them to a new home, Just imagine this tabby kitten who's been used to going where he likes and doing what he wants out in the fresh air of the countryside, and he suddenly becomes a town cat, He's shut up all day in a house. No, a flat more likely, yes. A poky little flat right up at the top of a high-rise block miles from the ground."
Martin stared out of the window of the 4th-floor flat at the street far below, and the view of houses and yet more houses, and mewed with misery at the thought that he would never see his father again, or his mother, Even seeing robin and lark would be a pleasure. So much of what Pug had said had actually happened. A number of people had come out to the farm, as they did at weekends, to buy fresh milk and new-laid eggs, and Martin had wandered amongst them, his father's warning entirely forgotten. Suddenly a hand had scooped him up, and he found himself pressed to the large bosom of a large lady.
"Oh, what a sweet little kitty!" she had cried,
and to the farmer's wife she'd said,
"I don't suppose you'd consider selling her, would you? Oh, she's so pretty. I've fallen in love with her. Love at first sight."
"Well, I don't know," said the farmer's wife.
"It's a he anyway, not a she,"
said the farmer's daughter. Escape now occupied all Martin's thoughts. It was a hot morning, and the person who came to clean the flat put down her duster and said to Martin,
"Oh, stuffy in here, ain't it, puss? Oh, let's have a bit of fresh air."
And she opened the window. Martin jumped up on the window-sill. Now that he could look straight down, he saw that the ground was a very long way away. But he also noticed something else. There was a tree below, too, and there was one branch which stuck out at an angle. A really brave kitten could, if he judged it correctly, drop straight down onto it. If his aim was even the slightest bit wrong, that would be dead wrong. Martin tensed himself. Then he let himself fall from the sill, legs spread wide, paws opened wide, claws unsheathed, tail whipping madly round, eyes fixed upon the branch below. Now there occurred a nightmare procession of close shaves for Martin. First, he failed to make a perfect landing on the branch, but half slid off. For an awful moment he hung, swinging to and fro. Then he dropped the rest of the way to the ground. No sooner had he landed, dazed and gasping, than he heard a loud barking, and a large hairy dog came rushing towards him. Martin dashed wildly across the road, narrowly avoiding the wheels of a passing car, and shot through the nearest gateway he could see. He found himself in a garden, at the bottom end of which was a shed. Under the shed was a space, and into this Martin crept and lay panting. Gradually he became aware of a strange smell. "Good afternoon," said a voice suddenly. Peering through the gloom, Martin could see a sharp, long-nosed face staring at him. "Good afternoon," said the fox once more. "Or do you not think that this afternoon is good?" Martin found his tongue. "No," he said. "No, I don't. You see, I've just jumped out of a fourth-floor window and almost been chewed up by a large dog and narrowly missed being run over by a car. And now you think you're going to be eaten by a fox. Well, you're not. We don't care for the smell of cats." Martin couldn't think of anything to say to this in view of the awful rank stink with which the air was filled. "What's your name?" "Martin." "Mine's Smart. Alex Smart. Anyway, what have you been up to, Martin? Sounds like you've used up 3 of your 9 lives in one day." "I'm trying to get home, Mr. Smart." "Call me Alec. Where's home?" "I live on a farm, Alec." "Oh, what are you doing in the middle of the town, then?" "A lady came to the farm and took me away in a box." "Ah, now you escaped. Whereabouts is this farm of yours?" I don't know." "Well, I'm acquainted with most of the farms round this town. Tell me something about it." "Well, it's got cows and pigs and hens and ducks and a black and white collie dog and cats, of course."
"Big deal," said the fox. "Could be any one of a dozen."
"Oh, there's some rabbits. 3 big white rabbits with pink eyes that live in 3 hutches."
"Now you're talking. Not every farm would have them. White rabbits, did you say?"
"Yes."
"Big ones?"
"Yes." The fox led the kitten across country until at last they came to the edge of a wood on the crest of a little hill. The moonlight showed a cluster of buildings in the valley below. "That's it!" cried Martin excitedly. "I can smell all the smells of home."
"Off you go, then, Martin."
Aren't you coming?"
No, not just now, but I might drop in one of these nights."
Alex Smart turned and melted away into the darkness. "Thanks for everything, Alec," called Martin after him. Night was changing into day, and in the trees behind him the birds began their dawn chorus. Approaching home from the outside for the first time, Martin noticed a long, low shed a couple of fields away from the farmyard. Curious, he went to explore it. There was some mouldy hay in a row of wooden mangers, and the earthen floor had a thin cover of frosty straw. Suddenly Martin saw a movement, and quickly and instinctively pounced. A squeak of terror told him that he had caught a mouse. He pulled it carefully from beneath the straw. "Cuthbert!" cried Martin in high delight. "It's me, Martin!" Cuthbert fainted clean away. At that instant Martin heard Drusilla's voice. "Cuthbert, did you squeak?" Martin leapt up into the nearest manger and hid behind the mouldy hay. He saw Drusilla waddle awkwardly across the floor, for she was, once again, very heavy with young, until she reached Cuthbert, who opened his eyes.
Where is he?" he said.
"Where's who?"
"Martin."
"Martin? Mr. Pug told us he's gone to live in town."
"Well, he's back," said Cuthbert. "He just caught me. Didn't you hear me squeak?"
"Are you certain it was really Martin, Cuthbert?"
"Oh, quite certain."
"He brought me a strawberry once," said Drusilla dreamily. "Do you remember?"
"Yes, I remember, but it's long past strawberry time now."
"Oh, more's the pity. I really fancy fresh fruit just now. A lovely juicy ripe blackberry from that bush in the farm garden," said Drusilla, and she waddled off back to her hole. Cuthbert followed. Martin lay in the manger savouring what he had just heard. She had spoken kindly of him. She would have her blackberry. He jumped down and set off for the farm. He was busy looking for a really juicy blackberry when he heard his mother's voice. "Martin," she said sharply, "why have you come home? Why are you eating blackberries? Why aren't you catching mice like an ordinary normal cat?" "Because, mother," said Martin firmly, "I am not an ordinary normal cat." "Ta!" spat Dulcie Maud angrily, and she stalked off.
"Typical,"
said a familiar voice. "Dad!" cried Martin.
"And Martin, lad!"
growled Pug, and they rubbed their round tabby faces together. Martin told him all about his adventures and his escape. "And, Dad," said Martin excitedly, "I found Drusilla and Cuthbert."
"Oh, you came back that way, past the field shed?"
"Yes. They should be pretty safe right out there, shouldn't they?"
"They are quite safe. I've made it plain to the rest of the family that the field shed is my territory."
"But what about all their children? What about 8?
"She's in no danger from me," said Pug. "I've given her a password and told her to tell it to all Drusilla's other children. Then if I catch 'em, they shout it out and I let 'em go."
"What's the password?"
"Martin's mice, eh? But I sometimes wish I hadn't thought of the idea. Amazing number of mice seem to have belonged to you."
"I shan't keep any more, Dad," said Martin, "now that I know what it's like to be shut up. Can we go over to the field shed now? Drusilla fancies a nice blackberry, you see." And he carefully mouthed off a large dark fruit. Martin placed the blackberry on the floor in front of the hole. "Drusilla," he called softly. After a little while a familiar face appeared. "Hello, Drusilla," said Martin. "I hear you're expecting another happy event. Many congratulations. I'm sure you'll be glad when it's all over. Must be so tiring for you. I don't know if you'd like it, but I've brought you a nice, fresh, juicy blackberry." Drusilla squeezed herself out of the hole.
"Oh, Martin," she said, "there never was a cat like you."